I'm Stella. Can you imagine the sheer heartbreak of watching your child's innocent joy be crushed by the one person who should have protected him, all because she decided that blood was the only thing that made a family? There is a specific kind of silence that falls over a room when a line has been crossed, a line so sacred that once it is breached, there is no going back, no amount of apologies that can bridge the chasm that opens up beneath your feet. I used to think that family was resilient, that the bonds we share with our siblings and parents are like old elastic, capable of being stretched to the breaking point and still snapping back into place. I believed that shared history, the memories of Christmas mornings and summer vacations, were enough to weather any storm. I was wrong. I was so incredibly wrong. My name is Maya, and for the longest time, I was the peacemaker. You know the type. The one who swallows her pride to keep the Sunday dinner from turning into a war zone. The one who smiles through the passive-aggressive comments about her career, her hair, her choices, just to see her mother smile. But mostly, I did it for my son, Leo. Leo is 7 years old, and he is the sun around which my entire universe orbits. He has eyes that seem to hold the kindness of the whole world and a laugh that bubbles up from his toes, infectious and pure. Leo is also adopted. My husband, David, and I struggled with fertility for years. It was a dark, lonely tunnel that seemed to have no end, filled with doctor's appointments, tears, and the crushing weight of monthly disappointments. When we finally decided to adopt, it felt like the clouds had parted. When we held Leo for the first time, I knew, with a certainty that vibrated in my very bones, that he was my son. Not biologically, perhaps, but in every way that mattered. My heart knit itself to his the moment I looked at him. However, not everyone in my family shared my view on what makes a parent. My older sister, Elena, has always been difficult. She's the kind of person who views life as a zero-sum game. If someone else is winning, she feels she is losing. She has 2 children of her own, my niece and nephew, whom I adore. But Elena has always held a strange, unspoken grudge against me, and when Leo came into the picture, that grudge found a target. It wasn't overt at first. It was subtle. It was the way she'd introduce Leo as Maya's adopted son while introducing her own kids simply by their names. It was the way she'd say, "Oh, he's so well behaved, you got lucky with his genetics," effectively erasing my parenting and his personality in one breath. I let it slide. I always let it slide. I told myself she was just clumsy with her words, that she didn't mean to be hurtful. I told myself that for the sake of my parents, who just wanted everyone to get along, I could handle the sting of her microaggressions. But this past New Year's Eve, the dam finally broke. It was supposed to be a celebration of new beginnings. Elena had insisted on hosting the family New Year's Eve party at her new house. Her husband, Greg, had recently been promoted, and they had moved into a sprawling, pristine home in an upscale neighborhood. Elena was obsessed with appearances. Everything had to be perfect. The napkins had to match the runner, the hors d'oeuvres had to be plated just so, and the guests, her family, had to act like props in her perfect life play. I was anxious about going. David saw it. He was packing the diaper bag. We still carried one for emergency snacks and toys, and he stopped, looking at me with that deep furrow in his brow. He asked me if I really wanted to do this. He reminded me that we could just stay home, order pizza, and watch the ball drop in our pajamas. It sounded like heaven. But then I thought of my mom. She had been hinting for weeks about how much she wanted all her grandbabies together for the countdown. She was getting older, and her health hadn't been great. The guilt tripped me, as it always did. I told David we had to go. I promised him we'd leave early if things got weird. The drive to Elena's house was tense, though we tried to keep it light for Leo. He was buzzing with excitement. He had this little noisemaker, a plastic clapper that he'd gotten in a party favor bag at school, and he was so proud of it. He kept asking, "Is it midnight yet, Mommy?" every 5 minutes. I explained to him that we had to wait for the big clock, and when the numbers hit 12, we would all shout Happy New Year and he could use his clapper. His eyes widened with anticipation. To him, the concept of a new year was magical, a door opening to a world of new adventures. When we arrived, Elena's house looked like something out of a magazine. It was cold, though. Not temperature-wise, but atmospherically. Everything was white and beige and grey. There were no personal photos on the walls, just abstract art. It felt like a showroom, not a home. Elena greeted us at the door with a glass of champagne in hand, already a bit flushed. She looked me up and down, her eyes lingering on my dress. It was a simple velvet wrap dress, comfortable and elegant, but I saw the critique in her eyes. She didn't say anything about it, though. Instead, she looked at Leo. "Hello, Leo," she said, her voice pitched a little too high, a little too fake. "Make sure you take your shoes off. These floors are imported marble." "Hi, Auntie Elena," Leo chirped, struggling with his laces. "I brought my clapper. For the midnight." Elena's smile faltered. "Oh, that's nice. But maybe let's keep that in your bag until later, okay? We don't want to give anyone a headache." David stepped in, placing a hand on Leo's shoulder. "He knows the drill, Elena. He's just excited." We moved into the living room where my parents and a few of Elena's friends were gathered. The atmosphere was stiff. Everyone seemed afraid to touch anything or speak too loudly. My mother hugged me tight, smelling of her familiar lavender perfume, and for a moment, I relaxed. My dad was in the corner talking sports with Greg. It seemed okay. Just a normal, slightly boring family gathering. But as the night wore on, the dynamic shifted. Elena was drinking more, and with every glass, her filter eroded. She started making those comments again. She talked loudly about how important bloodlines were when discussing a friend's inheritance dispute. She made a show of comparing her son's math scores to Leo's reading level, pointing out that her son was naturally gifted because kindness and intelligence run in our family. I felt David stiffen beside me on the sofa. I squeezed his hand, a silent plea to let it go. Just a few more hours, I thought. We just have to make it to midnight, say our goodbyes, and we're free. Dinner was an ordeal. Elena had prepared a complicated meal that wasn't particularly kid-friendly. Leo, being the trooper he is, tried to eat the truffle-infused risotto, but he didn't like the texture. He politely asked if he could just have some bread. Elena sighed, a loud, dramatic exhale that silenced the table. "You know," she said, looking directly at me, "it's really important to expand a child's palate early on. My kids have been eating truffles since they were 3. But I suppose it's hard when you don't know what kind of background they come from." The room went dead silent. The fork halfway to my mouth froze. My mother looked down at her plate. My father cleared his throat awkwardly. "Leo has a fine palate," David said, his voice low and dangerous. "He just doesn't like mushrooms. A lot of kids don't." "It's risotto, David, not just mushrooms," Elena snapped back. "Whatever. I'll get him some plain bread." She said it like she was offering charity to a beggar. I wanted to leave then. I should have left then. But I looked at Leo, and he was happily oblivious to the subtext, just waiting for his bread. I didn't want to make a scene and ruin his night. I wanted him to see the fireworks on the TV. I wanted him to have his midnight moment. So I stayed. And I swallowed the rage that was burning a hole in my stomach. The hours crawled by. We moved back to the living room for the countdown show. The energy picked up a bit. People were laughing, the music was louder. Leo was sitting on the floor with his cousins, playing with some blocks. He was happy. He was fitting in. Or so I thought. At 11:55 p.m., the anticipation kicked in. We all gathered around the massive flat-screen TV. The ball in Times Square was poised to drop. Elena was frantic, running around topping off glasses, ensuring everyone was in position for the perfect midnight photo. She positioned herself, Greg, and her 2 kids in the center of the room, right in front of the fireplace. "Okay, everyone," she shouted over the TV. 5 minutes. Get your champagne. Kids, get your sparkling cider." Leo ran over to us, his eyes shining. He pulled his plastic clapper out of his pocket. He was practically vibrating with joy. It's almost time, Mommy. It's almost time. I know, baby. I smiled, catching his excitement. Are you ready to make some noise? Yes, he squealed. He gave the clapper a little test shake. Asterisk clack clack dot asterisk. Elena whipped her head around. Leo, stop that. Not yet. Sorry, Auntie, Leo whispered, clutching the toy to his chest. The countdown began on the screen. 60 seconds. The room was buzzing. Everyone was chanting along with the TV. Asterisk 10. 9. 8. Asterisk. Leo was jumping up and down now. He couldn't contain it. He was a 7-year-old boy filled with pure, unadulterated happiness. He started clapping his hands together. Asterisk 7. 6. Asterisk. Yay! Happy New Year! Leo shouted a little early, shaking his clapper. Asterisk clack clack clack. Asterisk. It wasn't even that loud. The TV was blaring. Adults were shouting. But Elena turned on him like a viper. She marched over, her face twisted in a snarl that looked hideous beneath her expertly applied makeup. Stop it, she screamed. The room didn't go silent immediately, but the people closest to us did. Elena, relax, I said, stepping forward. He's just excited. Asterisk 3. 2. Asterisk. He's ruining the video. Elena shrieked. She grabbed Leo's arm. Not gently. She yanked him away from the center of the room, away from her perfect family tableau. You need to stay quiet, she hissed at him, but in the sudden lull before the final second, her voice carried through the entire room. You need to stay quiet and stand over there because you don't belong here. Asterisk 1. Happy New Year. Asterisk. On the TV, confetti rained down. Crowds cheered. Auld Lang Syne started playing. In Elena's living room, there was absolute, suffocating silence. Leo stood where she had pushed him, near the hallway entrance. His little hand was still clutching the clapper, but his arm hung limp by his side. The joy had been wiped from his face as if by a sponge, replaced by confusion and a welling of tears that broke my heart into a million jagged pieces. He looked at me, his lip trembling, and asked in a small, broken voice, Mommy? I don't belong. The sound of the world stopped. I didn't hear the TV. I didn't hear the guests. All I heard was the blood rushing in my ears, a roar like the ocean during a hurricane. I looked at my sister. She was standing there, panting slightly, realizing perhaps a second too late how loud she had been. She looked at me, and for a fleeting moment, I saw defiance in her eyes. She felt justified. She truly believed that this picture-perfect moment was hers and hers alone, and that my son was an intrusion, a flaw in the composition. David moved before I did. He crossed the room in 2 strides and scooped Leo up into his arms, burying Leo's face in his neck to shield him. Then he turned to Elena, his face a mask of cold fury. We're leaving, David said. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a knife. Oh, don't be dramatic, Elena scoffed, trying to recover, trying to laugh it off as she saw the shocked expressions of her friends. I just meant he doesn't belong in the asterisk picture star. I'm trying to get a family shot for Instagram. That was the match that lit the powder keg. A family shot. I repeated, my voice trembling not with tears, but with a rage so profound it felt like power. I stepped into her space. I saw her shrink back slightly. He is my son. He is your nephew. He is family. You know what I mean, Maya. Elena rolled her eyes, emboldened by the alcohol. It's not the same. It's never been the same. You playing house with him doesn't make him one of us. Look at him. He doesn't even look like us. He doesn't fit the aesthetic. The aesthetic. She was worried about the aesthetic of her New Year's party while shattering a 7-year-old's heart. My mother finally stepped in. Elena. That is enough. Apologize to your sister and nephew right now. No. Elena shouted, stomping her foot like a petulant child. I am sick of pretending. I am sick of everyone tiptoeing around Maya and her charity case. It's my house, it's my party, and I wanted one perfect moment without that outsider ruining it with his noise. I looked at my parents. My dad looked horrified, but he was staying back, as he always did. My mom looked torn, tears in her eyes. But nobody was doing anything. They were letting her speak. They were letting those words hang in the air. I walked over to the table where Elena had set up her resolution tree, a little decorative branch where guests were supposed to hang their wishes for the year. I grabbed my purse. You're right, Elena, I said, my voice eerily calm now. He doesn't belong here. Elena smirked, thinking she had won. He doesn't belong here, I continued, turning to face the entire room, ensuring every single one of her high society friends heard me, because this house is filled with something rotten. He doesn't belong here because he is kind, and he is pure, and he is full of love. And you are a hollow, bitter shell of a person who cares more about an Instagram photo than a human being's soul. Get out! Elena screeched. We're going, I said. But let me make one thing crystal clear. You didn't just exclude him from a photo. You excluded yourself from our lives. You don't have a nephew anymore. You don't have a sister anymore. Enjoy your perfect house, Elena. I hope the marble floors keep you warm at night. I turned to my parents. And if you condone this, if you let this slide like you've let everything else slide, then don't bother calling me tomorrow. We walked out. David carried Leo, who was sobbing softly now, asking what he did wrong. We walked out into the cold January air, leaving the warmth of the perfect house behind. As the door slammed shut, I felt a strange sensation. It wasn't just anger. It was relief. The cord had been cut. The burden of trying to force a square peg into a round hole was gone. The drive home was quiet. Leo fell asleep in his car seat, exhausted by the crying. David reached over and held my hand. I'm proud of you, he said softly. I feel sick, I whispered. How could she? How could anyone say that to a child? Because she's broken, David said. And she tried to break him to make herself feel whole. But we won't let her. When we got home, we didn't go straight to bed. We carried Leo inside, put him in his pajamas, and tucked him in. I sat by his bed for an hour, just watching him breathe, stroking his hair. I promised him, in the silence of his room, that I would never, ever let anyone make him feel like an outsider again. The fallout began the next morning. My phone blew up. Not with apologies from Elena, never that, but with messages from my mother. Maya, please pick up. Elena is hysterical. She didn't mean it like that. She had too much to drink. You know how she gets. She's under a lot of pressure with the new house. Please, don't tear the family apart over one comment. Think of the cousins. I read them all. And then I replied to the group chat that included my parents and Elena. She told my son he didn't belong because he isn't blood. She called him a charity case. There is no coming back from that. Do not contact us until you are ready to acknowledge the damage that was done. And Elena, do not contact us at all. Then I blocked Elena. I blocked her husband. I muted my parents. The silence that followed in the next few weeks was heavy, but it was also peaceful. We focused on Leo. We reassured him that Auntie Elena was just having a bad grown-up moment and that he was perfect exactly where he was. Kids are resilient, but they absorb things. He stopped asking to go to Auntie's house. He stopped asking about his cousins. It hurt to see his world shrink, but I knew it was better than exposing him to that toxicity. 2 months passed. It was now March. I had heard through the grapevine, a cousin who was on my side, that Elena was spinning a narrative. She was telling people that I had caused a scene at her party, that I was jealous of her new house, and that I had weaponized my son to ruin her night. It was infuriating, but I stayed the course. I refused to engage. I knew the truth, and David knew the truth. Then, the tables turned in a way I never expected. Remember how I mentioned Elena's husband, Greg, had gotten a big promotion? Well, it turned out that the promotion was heavily reliant on a merger that his company was negotiating. And the company they were merging with? It was a subsidiary of the firm where I work. I'm a corporate attorney. I don't talk about my work much with my family because Elena always found it boring, or perhaps, threatening. I worked hard to get where I am. I'm a senior partner now. And as fate, or karma, would have it, I was assigned as the lead counsel for the due diligence on the acquisition of Greg's company. I didn't seek this out. It landed on my desk because I was the best person for the job. When I saw Greg's name on the organizational chart of the target company, my heart stopped for a second. Then, it started beating with a slow, steady rhythm. I kept it professional. I didn't say a word to anyone at the office about the personal connection. I did my job. And in doing my job, I found things. Greg wasn't just promoted. He had been placed in a position where he was funneling company expenses into personal accounts to fund that perfect lifestyle Elena was so desperate to flaunt. The marble floors, the resolution tree, the truffles, they were all paid for with money that wasn't his. It wasn't a massive embezzlement scheme, but it was enough to be gross misconduct. It was enough to kill the deal if it came out, or at the very least, get him fired with cause. I sat with that file for a long time. I thought about New Year's Eve. I thought about Leo's face. I thought about "you don't belong here." I had a choice. I could bury it, let the deal go through, and let them keep their illusion. Or I could do my job. I did my job. I flagged the irregularities in the financial report. I didn't add any personal commentary. I simply highlighted the numbers that didn't add up and the expense reports that looked suspicious. I sent the report to the board of directors of the acquiring company. A week later, the news broke. Greg was fired. The acquisition was put on hold pending a full audit. The perfect house was suddenly a liability they couldn't afford without his inflated salary and the bonuses he had been stealing. That was when the phone calls started again. But this time, the tone was different. My mother called me, crying, "Maya, please. Greg has lost his job. They're going to lose the house. Elena is devastated. She says you're the lawyer on the deal. She says you did this to spite her." "I did my job, Mom," I said, my voice steady. "Greg did this to himself. He stole money. Did you expect me to cover up a crime?" "But family comes first," she wailed. "Can't you pull some strings? Can't you talk to them? Tell them it was a mistake. Family comes first." I laughed, a dry, humorless sound. Where was that sentiment on New Year's Eve? Where was family comes first when Elena told my son he didn't belong? You can't pick and choose when family matters, Mom. It matters when you're protecting a child, not just when you're protecting a thief. "She's your sister," my mom pleaded. "She's sorry. She really is." "She's sorry she got caught," I corrected. "She's sorry she's losing her status. She isn't sorry for what she did to Leo. Has she asked about him? Once?" Silence. That's what I thought. I hung up. A few days later, Elena showed up at my doorstep. It was raining. She looked nothing like the queen bee of New Year's Eve. Her hair was frizzy, she wasn't wearing makeup, and she looked 10 years older. I didn't invite her in. I stood in the doorway, blocking the view into my warm, happy home where Leo was playing video games in the living room. "What do you want, Elena?" "You ruined us," she spat, though there was no fire in it, just desperation. "You saw the name on the file and you decided to destroy us." "Greg destroyed you," I said calmly. "I just turned on the lights. If there hadn't been anything to find, my report would have been clean. Don't blame me for your husband's greed. We're going to lose the house, she sobbed. We have nowhere to go. We might have to move into Mom and Dad's condo. It's humiliating. Humiliating, I repeated. Like telling a 7-year-old boy he isn't part of the family in front of 30 people? Is it that kind of humiliating? She looked up at me, her eyes red. I was drunk. I was stressed. You were cruel, I said. And you meant it. That's the worst part, Elena. You meant every word. You've always looked down on us. You've always thought you were better. Well, now you have to live with the reality you built. Can you help us? She whispered. It was the first time in her life she had ever asked me for help. Please, Maya. Not for me. For the kids. My kids. I looked at her. I thought about her children, my niece and nephew. They were innocent in this, just like Leo was. I won't fix Greg's mess, I said. I can't. It's legal now. But, if the kids need things. School supplies. Clothes. Food. You tell Mom to tell me, and I will pay for it directly. But you and Greg get nothing from me. Not a cent. And you are not welcome in this house. She stared at me, realizing the power dynamic had shifted permanently. She was no longer the golden child. She was the one standing in the rain, begging the sister she had tormented. Thank you, she choked out, stiffly. Goodbye, Elena. I closed the door. I locked it. I walked back into the living room. Leo looked up from his game. Who was that, Mommy? Just someone selling things we don't need, I smiled. I sat down next to him on the floor. Hey, you know what? It's not New Year's, but do you want to order pizza and have a party? Just us. Leo's face lit up. Can we use the clappers? Yes, I laughed, pulling him into a hug. We can make as much noise as we want. We can shout and sing and dance. Because we belong here, he asked, a shadow of the memory surfacing. I held his face in my hands, looking deep into those beautiful eyes. Yes, my love. You belong here. You belong everywhere you go. And don't you ever let anyone tell you otherwise. That night, our house was loud. It was chaotic. It was messy. And it was perfect. We never went back to the family gatherings. My parents eventually came around, realizing that if they wanted to see Leo, they had to do it on our terms, separate from Elena. They visit us now, and they are learning to respect boundaries. Elena and Greg lost the house. They moved into a small apartment across town. Greg is facing legal trouble that will likely drag on for years. Elena works as a receptionist now. I hear she's humbled, but bitter. We don't speak. Sometimes, people think revenge means doing something terrible to someone else. But I learned that the best revenge isn't an action. It's a realization. It's realizing that you don't need the people who hurt you. It's realizing that your happiness doesn't depend on their approval. And watching them drown in the consequences of their own actions, while you thrive. That's not revenge. That's just justice. I look at Leo now, almost 8 months later, and his flourishing. He doesn't remember the silence of that room anymore. He only remembers the noise of our love. And that, to me, is the greatest victory of all. But let's back up a bit, because simply saying we thrived glosses over the hard work of healing. I want you to understand the depth of the betrayal, because it wasn't just about New Year's Eve. It was about a lifetime of Elena conditioning the family to see her as the protagonist and everyone else as supporting characters. Growing up, Elena was the beauty queen. She was the cheerleader, the one who brought home the trophies. I was the bookworm, the quiet one, the one who was going to be fine so nobody needed to worry about me. When I became a lawyer, my parents were proud, sure. But when Elena married Greg, a man with potential and a flashy car, it was treated like the second coming. This dynamic bled into adulthood. When we struggled with infertility, my mother would sigh and say, Well, at least Elena is giving us grandchildren. It wasn't meant to be malicious, but it was a dagger every time. When we adopted Leo, the reaction was lukewarm. "Oh, that's nice of you," Elena had said. "Saving a child." As if he were a stray dog we picked up at the pound, not a human being we fought to bring into our lives. The lead-up to that New Year's party was filled with red flags I chose to ignore. The group chat messages where Elena dictated the dress code, cocktail attire, strictly, no jeans, I don't care if it's comfortable. The demands for us to pitch in for the catering, even though she was hosting. The specific instructions on what toys Leo could bring, nothing with wheels, nothing with glitter, nothing loud. I remember sitting in my kitchen 2 days before the party, reading her text, also, make sure Leo understands that my boss will be dropping by. We need best behavior. No running around screaming. I turned to David. Is Leo a wild animal? Why does she talk about him like he's feral? David sighed, rubbing his temples. She's anxious, Maya. She thinks everything reflects on her. If Leo acts like a normal kid, she thinks it makes her look like she has a chaotic family. But we are a chaotic family, I argued. That's what families are. They are messy and loud. Not Elena's version, David said. Her version is a curated Pinterest board. We went anyway. I wish I could go back and shake myself. I wish I could tell that version of Maya, don't go. Protect your peace. But we often sacrifice our peace on the altar of familial obligation. We think that if we just try harder, if we just show up, eventually they will love us the way we need to be loved. The moment we stepped into that house, I felt the judgment. It was in the air, thick like humidity. Elena's friends were all clones of her. Perfect hair, expensive jewelry, hollow laughter. They looked at Leo with that polite, distant curiosity people reserve for things they don't understand. I remember one conversation clearly. I was in the kitchen getting Leo some juice. One of Elena's friends, a woman named Sarah, cornered me. "So," she said, swirling her wine. "Elena says your son is adopted." "Yes," I said, forcing a smile. "Do you know anything about the birth parents?" she asked, totally inappropriate. "I mean, aren't you worried about behavioral issues? You hear such horror stories." My blood ran cold. "Leo is a wonderful child," I said sharply. "And his history is his story to tell, not public gossip." Sarah looked taken aback. "I was just asking. Elena mentioned he has trouble focusing." Elena. Of course. She had been priming her guests to see Leo as troubled before he even walked in the door. That way, any normal childhood exuberance, like laughing or running or clapping, would be seen as a symptom of his bad genes rather than just joy. That context makes the countdown moment so much worse. It wasn't a snap judgment. It was a calculated exclusion. She had already decided he didn't belong before the night began. The "you don't belong here" wasn't an outburst, it was a thesis statement. When we left that night, the silence in the car was heavy. Leo broke it eventually. "Mommy." "Yes, baby. Is there something wrong with me?" I pulled the car over. Right there on the side of the highway, hazard lights flashing. I unbuckled, climbed into the back seat, and squeezed him so tight I thought I might pop. "Listen to me, Leo," I said, tears streaming down my face. "There is absolutely nothing wrong with you. You are magic. You are the best thing that ever happened to Daddy and me. Auntie Elena, she has a sickness in her heart. It makes her say mean things. But those things are about her not you. Do you understand?" He nodded, though I knew he didn't fully. How could he? The weeks following were a lesson in boundaries. My parents tried to broker a peace treaty. They invited us to Sunday dinner. "Elena will be there," my mom said over the phone. "She wants to clear the air." "No," I said. "Maya, you're being stubborn." "No, Mom. I'm being a mother. A mother protects her child. If you bring a dog around a child and the dog bites the child, you don't bring the dog back. Elena bit. And until she has been muzzled and trained, she isn't coming near Leo. She's not a dog, she's your sister. She stopped being my sister when she tried to break my son's spirit. It was hard. I missed my parents. I missed the idea of a big family. But I realized that the family I was mourning didn't actually exist. It was a fantasy I had projected onto people who were incapable of fulfilling it. Then came the discovery of the fraud. Sitting in my office, looking at those spreadsheets, I felt a strange sense of vertigo. Here was proof that the perfect life Elena used as a weapon against me was built on lies. The irony was suffocating. She had excluded my son because he didn't fit her high-class aesthetic, yet her husband was committing low-class theft to maintain it. I wrestled with the ethics of it, but not for long. As a lawyer, my duty was to my client, the acquiring company. If I let them buy a company that was being drained by an executive, I would be committing malpractice. I would be liable. But on a personal level, it felt like divine intervention. I remember the day the news broke. It was all over the local business journals. CFO ousted amidst embezzlement allegations. I was at the grocery store when I ran into a mutual acquaintance, a woman who had been at the party. She looked at me with wide eyes. "Did you hear about Greg?" she whispered, eager for gossip. "I heard," I said, picking out apples. "It's terrible," she said. "Elena is devastated. She's been calling everyone, asking for loans. She even asked Sarah." "That's unfortunate," I said. "But aren't you going to help them? You're the successful one now." I put the apple in my bag. I am successful because I work hard and I follow the rules. And I protect the people who matter. Elena made it very clear where we stand. The woman looked shocked by my coldness. But I didn't care. I was done performing the good sister. When Elena came to my door in the rain, that scene plays over in my head often. It was the moment I realized that my anger had transmuted into pity. She looked so small. All her power was gone because her power was external. It was the house, the clothes, the husband's title. Without those things, she was empty. My power was internal. It was my education, my career, my marriage, my love for my son. Nobody could take that away from me. I didn't enjoy seeing her suffer. I'm not a monster. But I respected the consequences. We did end up paying for my niece's dance lessons that year, and my nephew's soccer camp fees. I sent the checks directly to the schools. I didn't want the kids to suffer for their parents' mistakes. Elena found out, of course. She sent me a text. Asterisk, "I know you paid for ballet. Thank you." Asterisk. I didn't reply. I didn't need her gratitude. I did it because those kids are family, even if their mother forgot what that word means. Leo is doing great in school now. We found a new group of friends, other families who are diverse, accepting, and loud. We have potlucks where the kids run screaming through the house and nobody cares about their aesthetic. We have movie nights where we eat popcorn on the couch and spill things and laugh about it. My parents are slowly learning. They come over, and they see how happy we are. My dad actually apologized to me recently. We were sitting on the porch, watching Leo catch fireflies. "I should have said something," he murmured. "At the party. I should have stood up for him." "Yes," I said. "You should have." I'm so used to Elena getting her way. It was easier to stay quiet. "Silence is complicity, Dad," I said gently. "When you stay quiet, you're choosing the side of the bully." He nodded, tears in his eyes. "I know. I'm sorry. He's a good boy, Maya. He belongs." "I know he does, Dad." It's a process. Healing isn't linear. There are days when I'm still angry. Days when I want to scream at the unfairness of it all. But then I look at Leo, and I realize that we dodged a bullet. Being excluded from that toxic environment was the best thing that could have happened to us. It forced us to build our own village, one founded on love and acceptance rather than blood and status. So, if you're out there, and you have a family member who makes you feel like you have to shrink yourself to fit in, or who treats your children as less than because they don't fit a certain mold, walk away. Don't wait for the explosion. Don't wait for the insults. Just pack your bags and go. Create your own traditions. Create your own joy. Because the only people who belong in your life are the ones who celebrate you, not the ones who tolerate you. And as for the "you don't belong here" comment, we turned it into a joke. Whenever we go somewhere fun, Disney World, the park, the pizza place, Leo will look at me with a cheeky grin and say, "Do we belong here, Mommy?" And I always shout, "We belong everywhere." And we make as much noise as we want. I often think about the concept of belonging. It's primal, isn't it? We all want to be part of the tribe. For thousands of years, being cast out meant death. That fear is hardwired into us. That's why we tolerate toxic family members for so long. That's why I tolerated Elena's snide remarks for years. The fear of being the outcast. But what I learned is that there are different kinds of tribes. There are tribes of circumstance, the people you share DNA with. And then there are tribes of choice, the people you share values with. Elena's tribe was built on image. It was fragile. One crack in the facade, a lost job, a scandal, and the whole thing crumbled. Her friends abandoned her the moment the money dried up. That's not a tribe, that's an audience. My tribe is built on connection. When things got hard for us, when we were struggling with the adoption process, our friends showed up. They brought casseroles. They sat with us in the waiting rooms. That is resilience. I remember one specific evening about 4 months after the fallout. It was Leo's birthday. We decided to throw a big bash in our backyard. We invited all his school friends, our neighbors, and my colleagues. It was a motley crew. I was nervous. It was the first big event we'd hosted since the New Year's incident. I found myself fretting over the decorations, wondering if the cake was fancy enough. David stopped me. He grabbed my shoulders and looked me in the eye. "Maya, stop. Who are you trying to impress? Elena isn't here." It was like a splash of cold water. He was right. I was still carrying her voice in my head, critiquing my choices. "You're right," I exhaled. "Okay. Let's get the bounce house." We got the bounce house. We got a face painter. We served hot dogs and hamburgers on paper plates. It was glorious. Midway through the party, I looked around. There were kids everywhere, covered in grass stains and frosting. Parents were sitting on lawn chairs, laughing, drinking beer out of cans. My parents were there, sitting a bit tentatively at first, but then my dad got pulled into a game of cornhole by one of my neighbors. I saw him laugh, a real, belly laugh. My mom was holding a baby, my friend's newborn. She looked peaceful. She wasn't looking around to see if anyone was judging her outfit. She was just present. Leo ran up to me, his face painted like a tiger. "Mommy, this is the best day ever." "I'm so glad, baby," I said, wiping a smudge of blue icing from his chin. "Grandma said I'm her favorite tiger," he beamed. I looked over at my mom. She caught my eye and gave a small, sheepish smile. It was a start. That night, after everyone had left and we were cleaning up the debris of a day well spent, I found a card on the kitchen counter. It was from my parents. Inside was a check for Leo's college fund. And a note. Asterisk to our grandson, Leo. "We are so proud of the young man you are becoming. We love you. Grandma and Grandpa." Asterisk. It wasn't a grand public apology. It wasn't a denouncement of Elena. But it was an acknowledgement. It was them putting a stake in the ground and saying, "He is ours." I cried. David held me while I cried over a Hallmark card and a pile of sticky paper plates. It hasn't been perfect since then. Elena still tries to manipulate the narrative from afar. hear stories occasionally. She tells people that I'm cruel and unforgiving. She plays the victim card hard. But fewer and fewer people are buying it. The truth has a way of rising to the surface, like oil in water. Greg eventually took a plea deal to avoid jail time. He's on probation and has to pay massive restitution. They are drowning in debt. It's a tragedy, really. A tragedy of their own making. Sometimes I wonder if I should have reached out. If I should have been the bigger person and offered them a lifeline. But then I remember the clapper. I remember the look on Leo's face. And I remember that being the bigger person doesn't mean letting yourself be a doormat. Sometimes, being the bigger person means protecting the little people who can't protect themselves. I realized that by holding Elena accountable, I was actually treating her with more respect than if I had enabled her. I was treating her as an adult capable of understanding cause and effect. If I had bailed her out, she would have learned nothing. She would have continued to trample on people, secure in the knowledge that there was always a safety net. I cut the net. And she fell. And now she has to learn to climb. It's a harsh lesson, but a necessary one. As for Leo, we talk openly about emotions now. We don't hide things. If he feels excluded at school, we talk about it. We role-play how to handle bullies. We reaffirm his worth daily. He still has that plastic clapper. It sits on his bookshelf. He doesn't play with it much anymore, but he won't let me throw it away. Why do you want to keep it? I asked him once. It reminds me of when Daddy saved me, he said. He didn't remember the insult as much as he remembered David swooping in and taking him out of the situation. He remembered the rescue. He remembered that his parents chose him over everyone else. And that is the most important takeaway. Children might not understand the complexities of adult politics, or inheritance, or social status. But they understand safety. They understand who makes them feel safe and who makes them feel scared. We chose to be his safe harbor. And in doing so, we found our own safety too. We found a life that is authentic, messy, loud, and filled with love. So, to anyone listening who is dealing with a toxic family member during the holidays, or any time of year, you have permission to leave. You have permission to say no. You have permission to prioritize your mental health and your children's well-being over keeping the peace. Because peace that is kept at the expense of your dignity isn't peace. It's submission. And we were not born to submit. We were born to roar. Or, in Leo's case, we were born to clap our hands and shout Happy New Year whenever we damn well please. I'm Stella, and this has been a story about boundaries, betrayal, and the noise of true happiness. If you've ever had to cut off a family member to save your sanity, I want you to know, you did the right thing. You belong exactly where you are, in the life you've built for yourself. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Let the silence of their absence be the sweetest sound you ever hear. And fill that silence with your own joy. Goodbye for now.